Welcome once again, my fellow manipulators of digital fate. I'm Richie, this is Capricorn, and this is the video that a lot of you have been waiting for. This is the World Championship Finals match from the Wonders of the First Dragon Cup that took place in Las Vegas back in November. This is a match between myself and Alex HonestAF Friedrichsen. It was the craziest game I think I've ever played in my entire life. $100,000 prize pool, which was absolutely insane. And a couple of caveats I want to mention before we dive right into the gameplay. First of all, this game went over 2.5 hours. The top 8 matches were all untimed. You could take as much time as you wanted. And because every single action was so important and so critical, there were so many moments during the match where we really had to stop and think hard about exactly what to do. And part of the reason for that is simply the fact that we were both 7, 8, 9 actions ahead in our head, similar to chess, really trying to get in front of everything that the opponent was trying to do and just think that far ahead. It was absolutely crazy. We were thinking about round 6 when we were in round 4, and we had like 17 different games in our heads at the same time, constantly playing out, trying to adapt and figure out which of those possible outcomes was best to pursue, and it was just utterly insane. You'll see once you watch the game. Before we dive in, please like the video, please subscribe if you're new, and congratulations to Alex. Let's check it out. The finals for the World Championship Dragon Cup have begun. Mulligans have already been decided, so we'll each draw a card for the round and start. Alex begins by spending an action to draw a card, and I follow suit drawing a card of my own. Alex then spends another action to draw a second card, but now I'm gonna drop a Sunfire City. He responds by dropping a Gearhart Enclave Inner of his own, and then I spend my last action to draw a card. It's the end of round 1, we both only have one land in play, a very slow start for both of us, and now we have to decide what to discard. I discard an Etherean and a Galactic Sovereign Throne. Alex discards an Omnis Quantum, and then has a very difficult decision to make about the other card that he wants to discard. These early rounds move very fast at the top tier of competitive play, as both players kind of know exactly what their play lines are at the beginning of the game, trying to get to the way their deck wants to play out as quick as possible. It is worth noting that in the finals, and in fact in the entire top 8, the rounds were untimed, so we weren't necessarily under any time pressure. Both players simply knew exactly what they wanted to do, other than Alex having to make a difficult decision here about what card to discard. But I'm going into round 2 specifically keeping in mind the fact that Alex has only played one land, and he might be in a little bit of a bind. So we're moving into round 2 now. It's the beginning of round 2, and the second realm will be unlocked. The second stone is up for grabs. We're both back to 3 actions and 2 energy each. And now Alex is going to start by playing a Moonfire Crystal Mouse in Realm 2. That's going to use up all of his energy because he doesn't have a Thauwind Link to reduce the cost, and leaves him with 2 actions. Now I have a difficult decision about how I want to pivot around this mouse. Is he going to save it to get value next round and get even more energy, or is he going to use it right away? I would guess he's probably going to save it for next round since he didn't have the link. I'm going to spend an action here to draw a card, give myself some more options as far as what I can do in round 2, and then turn it over to Alex. Another thing to note about playing at high tiers in competitive play is a lot of time it comes down to baiting your opponent's actions out from under them and trying to trick them into using up their value before you do so that you have more information. I'm going to spend another action here and play a Glacium Keep. This is going to give me a Thauwind Link. I now have 2 links, one for Thauwind and one for Boundless, and Alex only has the 1 land still. So it is going to be a little bit trickier for him to catch up unless he's simply holding off on playing his lands and hasn't shown what he has yet. He decides to sacrifice the mouse? No. He attacks with the mouse in Realm 2 and takes the stone first, which makes sense. That pushes me to have to respond by putting value in Realm 2, or just let him have the stone for free, knowing that he's only really intending to ever sacrifice that mouse for the value. So getting to attack in Realm 2 first and take the stone is kind of just a free stone for Alex here. And I'm thinking hard about what my next play is. I only have one action left. I decide to spend that action and 1 energy to play a Thought Tempest. This will let me dig through my deck and find key answers or key ways to out-tempo Alex in the early rounds of this game. I draw 3, and then I have to choose 1 card to go back on top. Priority now passes to Alex, and he's going to actually sacrifice the mouse, which I didn't see coming. He's definitely valuing the card draw more than the energy here, because it cost him the same amount of energy to play that mouse as he got back when he sacrificed it. I'm going to respond by harvesting my Glacium Keep for an action, because clearly I drew something with the Thought Tempest that I want to play now. Alex has 1 action left, and he now has 2 energy because he sacrificed the mouse. And he's thinking carefully about his follow-up play. I have to assume he has something really good to play for that 2 energy, if it was worth it for him to sacrifice the mouse there. He does seem to be thinking carefully about his play, which to me signals that he didn't necessarily have a play in mind, and he was more sacrificing the mouse to dig for 2 more cards, draw 2 cards from his deck, and find more options, more answers. It could simply be that he's very low on lands, he needs his lands to play core cards, and he needs to draw as many cards as quickly as possible to try and find those lands. He passes, and I play the Oakthorn's Elysium with my last action. I now have all 3 of my main orbitals with links in play, which is really, really good for me. He's going to spend 1 action and 2 energy and drop a Betrayer of Ironskin Clan in Realm 1. This is actually a really good play for him. Since I have 2 unharvested lands, he can now get bonus energy when I harvest lands, as well as when he harvests lands. And I do harvest my Oakthorn's Elysium to get an action. One thing that I want to point out here is if I can force him to get that extra energy with the Betrayer in a round where he can't really effectively use it, it's a little bit better for me. So harvesting that Oakthorn's Elysium, getting the action so that I can then follow up and play Ashenleaf, he probably can't use that energy this round, whereas next round if I waited and harvested then, he probably could. He is going to harvest his land, get an action, and get another energy, so he is up to 2 energy. There is a decent chance here he can actually play something with that action he harvested because of that 2 energy, and that's all thanks to Betrayer of Ironskin Clan. That being said, I now have an Ashenleaf in play. I can now put pressure on Realm 2 while also giving myself access to another action later in the game, which in and of itself is also really powerful. He's got 1 action left, and I'm trying to decide if it's worth it to harvest again to attack. If I do, he could play something that costs 3 energy, which is a lot. We're just simply signifying here with that black marker that that was the stone that was last captured, so that we can accurately track who gets to start the next round. I'm still thinking long and hard about if I want to pass or if I want to harvest that Ashenleaf. Alex is thinking about how to follow up his play. Clearly he's going to want to try to use that action that he gained to play something and not waste the energy he's getting from the Betrayer. I do in fact pass, and Alex decides to play another Moonfire Crystal Mouse. He still has to pay the full cost for it because he doesn't have a Thawwind link yet. but he does have the 2 energy because of the harvests. And now I see a window. Now that his energy is gone and his action is gone, I harvest the Ashen Leaf knowing that he can't use the extra energy this round, and I can get that action and successfully attack in 2, where he only has 1 power to my 2 power because of his mouse. And that's going to end round 2. It is the beginning of round 3. The 3rd realm is unlocked. The 3rd stone is up for grabs. I took the last stone in realm 2, so I get to start here, and we'll both draw a card for the round. I have 4 energy to Alex's 3, and I have pretty much all of my links, or at least all of the links for my main orbitals, and Alex only has 1. So it does look like I'm in the lead here. That being said, Alex's deck can come out of nowhere with kind of anything, so you always have to be on guard. I'm going to spend my first action here to play a Resonance Reach, giving me access to a Heliosynth link, another action later on, and also the ability to put a shield counter on target wonder when I harvest it. I'm up on actions, I have all of my links, and things are looking really good for me. Alex knows it, and he knows that he has to dig for enough value to sort of get himself back in this game. More importantly, it looks like he needs to dig for the links that he needs, not only to stay cost efficient and keep up with my tempo, but also so that he can play some of his core cards as the game stretches on. He's carefully thinking about his first play here. What does he decide to do? He's going to sacrifice the mouse right away. So he's going to go up to 5 energy, draw 2 cards. Will he finally be able to draw into his missing links the lands he needs, or at least some tempo plays he can use to catch up to my board state? We'll find out soon enough. 5 energy is a lot from his position. That being said, most of the cards in his deck are going to cost an extra energy since he doesn't have most of his links in play. He decides to spend some of his energy, it looks like 4 energy, and he plays an utterly complex compound bow. Probably the best card he could play in this situation. Every action he spends is going to allow him to draw 2 cards, as well as get a bunch of extra negligible value like gaining 1 energy, putting 2 -1 counters on an enemy, and it enters with a shield counter itself, as well as being attuned so it doesn't cost an action. This is one of the most powerful cards in the game, and in a situation like this where he's behind and needs to find his links, it can catch him up real quick. That being said, my deck specializes in reducing my opponent's action economy and taking away their actions, especially later in the game, sort of cutting them off at the knees. So as soon as I see the bow, my first thought is, how do I bait him into using as many actions as possible, probably more actions than he should, attacking with the bow so that he's not playing actual value into other realms and putting pressure on those realms, and instead devoting all of his actions to the bow. Because if he does that, and then later in the game I'm allowed to take away the rest of his actions with all of the cards in my deck that do that, he's not going to have enough actions left to put value into all of these other realms and claim all of these other stones. Granted, I might be getting a little bit ahead of myself, but that's what it's like when you're playing at the upper tiers of competitive play at big events like these. You have to think 6, 7, 8 actions ahead, sometimes thinking 2 whole rounds ahead from where you're currently at in the game. And there is a lot of that happening in this game right now. Both myself and Alex have like 7 different games in our heads at the same time, evaluating different ways that certain plays could shake out for the long term. And I decide to drop a giant Hydro Jelly, taking an action away from Alex so that he can't get as many attacks with the bow, can't get as much value out of it, while also shoring up my defenses in Realm 1 so that if he does attack with the bow, he doesn't have enough power to claim the stone there. I definitely want to make his attacks in Realm 1 when he triggers that bow as inefficient as possible. And if I can keep it so that he can't claim the stone on any of those attacks, it makes it so that he wastes value that he doesn't want to waste every time he swings with the bow. And it looks like he's going to take a moment here to reread the card. He clearly has a certain play line in mind when it comes to that card. But it's also worth pointing out here that there was a bit of a misplay. When he played the bow, he triggered his 𝐅𝐻𝐼𝐪 Enclave Inner, putting a shield counter on his Betrayer of Ironskin clan, which is exactly what the land does. The problem there is it's a Kingdom 2 ability, and he only has one land in play. I didn't catch it while we were playing, but he shouldn't have that shield counter on the Betrayer of Ironskin clan. And now that I think about it, that's actually going to make a huge difference later on in the game. That being said, he decides to attack in Realm 1. He puts 2 -1 counters on the Hydro Jelly, draws 2 cards, gains an energy, and I follow suit by harvesting, putting a shield counter on the Hydro Jelly, so that again he cannot target it, putting more -1 counters on it, which means he still can't claim the stone in 1 on his next attack, which is really powerful for me. Not only that, but because he attacked while I had more power, I was able to take the stone there without even having to attack myself because I won the combat. So as you can see, I am doing my best to get as much value out of his inevitable plays and activations of that bow as I possibly can. And now I'm just thinking about the future. I do need to deal with the bow somehow, or at least just find ways to keep mitigating the value that he gets out of it. He's thinking carefully about what his next play will be now that he realizes it's going to take him 2 attacks before he ever gets to take that stone when he does attack in 1 to trigger the bow. Another thing worth pointing out is that I'm still taking every opportunity I can to harvest during a round that he can't take advantage of all of the extra energy, or at least where it's going to be harder for him to do so. Because he's sort of bottlenecked by his actions, it's better to try and harvest myself in a round where he doesn't have the actions to actually use that extra energy. I did spend an action to draw a card here, and it's back to Alex. He's deciding what he wants to do next and how to get as much value as possible. I'm sure he has plenty of plays he can make. The question is, what's the best one? And he seems to think the best play is another Betrayer of Ironskin clan in Realm 1. This will give him the ability to, on his next attack, take the stone there, as well as trigger the bow, which is kind of what he wants to do. It also gives him the ability to get even more energy whenever anything's harvested. Every single time any land or wonder is harvested, he's going to gain 2 energy for each harvest, which is honestly kind of crazy. And at this point, I'm sort of noticing that his defenses are down to some extent because he's out of actions completely. I do get to go first in the next round though, so I'm sort of focused on just preparing for that as much as possible. I'm going to use my last action to drop an Oakthorn's Elysium, and then we're going to end the round. So that's the end of round 3, and now it's the beginning of round 4. The 4th realm is unlocked, the 4th stone is up for grabs, and I'm going to start right away by spending an action to play something incredibly powerful from my hand. This is a key play here. I'm going to play the Wind Reaver, stealing the Betrayer of Ironskin clan. Now, if I had noticed that he shouldn't have a shield counter on his other Betrayer, this would have been a much more powerful play, because I would have taken the other Betrayer, which the bow is attached to, and the bow basically gives the abilities to the wonder, which means if I then attack, I get to trigger the bow myself and get the value off the bow, which would have let me kill his Betrayer eventually, draw a bunch of cards, make more energy, and more importantly, not let him trigger his own bow. Of course, I'm sure if that happened, he would have just had his own wonder to play and would have equipped the bow himself all over again and taken it away from me, which he can do as soon as he plays a wonder into Realm 1. So it's really hard to know how the game would have actually gone if we had caught that earlier. But even just taking his other betrayer here makes his life really difficult, because now he's back in the same situation he was, where he can't really effectively attack in one and take the stone and do what he wants to do when he wants to attack and trigger that bow. In fact, he doesn't want to put the -1/-1 counters on his own betrayer, so it's actually even better than playing my own Wonder to Realm 1, because it sort of has a natural defense to the counters coming off of the bow. He decides to drop a serious Aether Blade, which honestly is a pretty good choice here, because now it's going to shut down my ability to make energy from the betrayer that I stole from Alex. That's going to make things really hard for me as far as generating extra energy, but it also gives him 4 power in 3, so that my Wind Reaver's 3 power is not enough to take the stone there. Being able to play a card and get value in 2 different ways, potentially in 2 different realms at the same time, is a part of what it takes to be really, really good at this game, I feel. And Alex has perfectly executed that here. I'm going to spend an action to draw a card. I'm clearly digging for more ways to get out of this situation. And it will be back to Alex. Alex has to be very, very careful here, deciding on exactly what to do. He's completely out of energy, and he can gain energy by attacking in Realm 1 and triggering the bow. He can also gain energy if he harvests or if I harvest. And it looks like he knows that. He's going to drop a Wave Whisperer Bay, look at the top card, try and dig a little bit deeper for the links that he's missing. But most importantly, he's able to get a Thauwind link online finally, which is definitely going to help him turn this game around. I have 1 action left, he has 1 action left, and I spend my 1 action and all of my energy. And I'm going to make a big play here. I decide to play Eye of Petria into Realm 3. Not only is this going to allow me to attack and take the stone in 3, but it's going to allow my Wind Reaver to fly out and get into a realm where it's more useful, while leaving behind enough power to actually defend the realm successfully against the serious Aether Blade. Looks like it's a whopping 7 power because of my 5 lands and Alex's 2 lands. Alex looks like he has something in mind. He's going to harvest for an action and an energy. He's up to 2 actions and just 1 energy. And I'm also going to harvest and get 1 action back. It looks like he probably sees this coming. Now he has access to 2 energy, 1 from his harvest, 1 from my harvest. And he's probably going to try and take advantage of my greed, trying to make that attack in Realm 3 by harvesting, giving him an energy. Now he possibly has the energy to make the play he needs to play to stop me. Looks like he's assessing the situation in Realm 1, considering playing a card there, or considering whether he should attack and gain 1 more energy off the bow. Looks like he decides to attack in Realm 1. He'll get to gain an energy, putting him at 3. He'll get to draw 2 more cards, which gets him even closer to his missing links. And he gets to spit out 2 -1 counters on whatever he wants. And it looks like I'm ready to deliver. I have my -1 counters ready to go. But he's going to take a moment to decide exactly where he wants to place them. He definitely doesn't want to put them on the Betrayer of Ironskin clan, since that's his own wonder and it's going to come back to him. He decides to put the counters on the Wind Reaver, which is a decent target because if he ever attacks again, he could put 2 more on it and kill it. I'm going to take this opportunity to attack in Realm 3 just like I planned, take the stone there, and move the Wind Reaver into Realm 4. It's ready to take a stone there as well at the start of next round. And Alex knows this, so he probably doesn't want to let it survive. He decides to play a Solaris Stormcaster in Realm 1. 3 cost, and it's a tuned Heliosynth, and he does have the Heliosynth land. so he doesn't have to spend an action, which means that last action he had, he still gets to save for a potential attack, or possibly just playing something else. He attaches it to the Betrayer, which means now if he attacks in Realm 1, not only does he get to spit out 2 -1 counters on whatever he wants, possibly killing the Wind Reaver, but he also just gets to give a -2 power to whatever he wants in Realm 1 from the Solaris Stormcaster as well, which could allow him to steal the stone there without actually killing his Betrayer. And it looks like that's what he's considering doing. He's thinking carefully about what to do with his last action. I made it a point to point out the fact that I do have that shield counter still on the giant Hydro Jelly. And he has a second shield counter on his Betrayer of Ironskin clan from when he played his Solaris Stormcaster. Gearhart Enclave triggered correctly this time because of Kingdom 2 and put a shield counter on that Betrayer. More than likely he is going to attack here. He does attack. He draws 2 cards off of the bow. He uses up that action there. Now he's deciding what he wants to do with his triggers. He's going to gain an energy, but where does he put his 2 -1 counters? He finishes off the Wind Reaver, puts the 2 -1 counters there, which effectively reduces its power to -1, killing the Wind Reaver. And he's hoping to remove that shield counter with the Stormcaster, but I choose not to remove it because it is my choice. He still doesn't have enough power to win the stone in 1. That's going to be the end of round 4 and the beginning of round 5. The 5th realm is unlocked and the 5th stone is up for grabs. I'm going to start with 7 energy here, and he only gets to start with 5, so I am doing a pretty good job sort of bottlenecking him on energy. That being said, he does get his Betrayer of Ironskin clan back, and having 2 of them again means he does have access to a bunch of extra potential energy, depending on more harvests and how those work out. Since I did claim the last stone, I will get to go first here. But we're getting to the point in the game that's going to be very, very tricky as far as what I do and when I do it. I use an action and 3 energy to play my own Sirius Aetherblade. And I think this is probably my first major misplay of the game. Even though it's right to try and get the Sirius down and shut off his Betrayers, I think putting it out this early puts it at risk, especially putting it in Realm 1. Unfortunately, I had tunnel vision on the fact that if I put his 4 power in Realm 1, he wouldn't be able to take the stone with 1 more attack. And since that's been my strategy up until this point, it made sense for me to keep doing that. What I should have done is prioritized keeping Sirius alive, not putting him in unnecessary danger in Realm 1, and this should have been the point in the game where I pivot my strategy away from trying to stop Realm 1 and trying to do more in other realms. I also should have waited to play Sirius until after he was out of actions, or at least closer to being out of actions, so that he'd have less potential attacks in Realm 1 with the bow and less chances to kill the Sirius. And I could have waited to do any harvesting that I might be doing until after the Sirius hits play, so that he still wouldn't be able to gain the extra energy off of those 2 Betrayers. And if I'm worried about him harvesting his own lands that he ends up dropping this round and getting energy out of that stuff, I could still wait to play the Sirius until after he plays those lands and still shut off the Betrayers while making sure he has the least amount of actions possible to initiate attacks with the bow. He decides to drop a Kaelith Leaf Tracker in Realm 1 and attach the Solaris Stormcaster to the Kaelith. This is really bad news for me. Not only was it arguably a misplay to play Sirius in Realm 1 to begin with, but now that he has a Solaris Stormcaster attached to a 4 power wonder, he'll be able to initiate an attack, give something -4, and spit out 2 -1 counters, which means he does have the ability to just kill Sirius in one fell swoop. He's gonna untap his Wave Whisperer Bay. No, he changes his mind and untaps his 𝐅𝐻𝐿𝐷 Inner, which I think is smart, because if I have a Galen Mosspaw or a Crimson Marauder or anything that I can use to affect that land, he would prefer me to play that wonder in Realm 1, where I'm significantly underpowered, rather than me playing it in Realm 4, where I can easily attack and take another stone without really anything stopping me on the other side. This is a pretty big swing for him. He has the ability to harvest both the Calyth and the land he untapped for 2 actions and generate 2 energy, which would actually be 4 energy because he has the 2 Betrayers. Now I really need Sirius to not die, but unfortunately the Stormcaster equipped to the Calyth is making that virtually impossible. If he decides to attack in Realm 1 again and just fires everything off at the Sirius, it's dead and there's not a whole lot I can do about it. Thinking carefully about what I could possibly do to pull myself out of this situation, and honestly there's not a whole lot. I do have one play I'm considering. If I can try and hit him in his action potential, take away his ability to do more attacks, maybe, just maybe, he won't gain as much value as he wants to off of attacking in 1. I think it's probably my best bet. And the best card I have in my hand for doing that is a Gravitational Grasp. This is going to allow me to tap his Calyth down, and it will also untap my Ashen Leaf. Granted, he has his own Sirius, which means that Ashen Leaf is nullified, and I'm not going to be able to do a whole lot with it. But if I ever get rid of his Sirius down the line, there is another action waiting for me to be harvested out of the Ashen Leaf, and he does exactly what we expect him to do, responding by spending his next action to attack in 1, targeting the Sirius with both the Solaris Stormcaster and the 2 -1 counters from the bow, killing the Sirius in 1 fell swoop. And with the extra power from the Calyth, he now has plenty of power in Realm 1 to seize the stone regardless of my giant Hydro Jelly. This makes things really difficult for me. I only have 1 action left, and I have to try to figure out a way to come back from this insane disadvantage, this crazy value engine that he has online in Realm 1, with both Utterly Complex Compound Bow and Solaris Stormcaster. Now, I have a difficult decision to make here because I only have 1 action left. Do I draw a card and dig for an answer, or some way to swing the tempo back in my favor? Or do I bait him into using up his action first by passing? Now, he could just pass as well, but me having 2 stones to his 1 makes me feel pretty confident in my lead if he does pass. So it looks like he's not going to pass. It looks like he's thinking about harvesting his final land, his only untapped land, and instead he decides to spend his last action to play another land, a Resonance Reach. This will allow him to put a shield counter on one of his wonders. And since his Sirius is shutting off my Ashen Leaf, he knows that he needs to make it hard for me to kill the Sirius to keep me from catching up as far as action potential is concerned. That makes things even harder for me now, because if I want to get rid of the Sirius, I basically have to do it now or never, and I don't think I have something in hand that can get the job done. I decide to play a Galen Mosspaw, the ace up my sleeve. It doesn't use up my final action, and it allows me to shut off his ability to harvest the Resonance Reach, which will also shut off his ability to put a shield counter on the Sirius, which is kind of huge for me, to be completely honest. Even though I'm wasting the power in that realm to a certain extent, taking away the ability to get the shield counter as well as one of his actions is exactly what I need to do in this situation. And now Alex is analyzing the board state, realizing he has no actions left, only 1 harvestable land, so 1 action at most, and I still have an action left on my side. He's probably realizing it makes sense to pass, make me use up whatever value I have first, and then if he does decide to want to harvest that final land and do more this round, he'll do so knowing that I've used up all of my actions and all of my potential, and he'll have full information available to him. So he passes, and I decide to use my final action to play an 𝐼𝐻𝐻𝑟𝑎 Citadel in Realm 4, giving me access to 2 potential actions at a later point in time. He decides to harvest his 𝐅𝐻𝐻𝑟𝑎𝑛𝑐𝑒 𝑅𝐽𝑒, giving him 1 action and 2 more energy because of those 2 betrayers. And now I'm faced with a dilemma, because there's a part of me that wants to save my potential 3 actions from these 2 lands I have untapped for later on in the game and have an action advantage over Alex, but there's another part of me that wants to get out as much value as I can now, dig for as many answers in my deck now, and do whatever I can in round 5 and not wait until later. I definitely want to keep my Sunfire City untapped, just in case in a later round he plays a card that steals my stuff. Harvesting the Sunfire City will let me get it back. But do I harvest the 𝐼𝐻𝐻𝑟𝑎 Citadel now and use the value now, or do I try to hoard it for later? Honestly, I'm not sure what the right answer is. I guess it depends on my hand. But a few things I need to keep in mind is, if he decides to play a Calyth before I harvest my 𝐼𝐻𝐻𝑟𝑎 Citadel, he can tap that land down and then I will lose those 2 actions forever. If he plays a Crimson Marauder, he could potentially steal the 𝐼𝐻𝐻𝑟𝑎 Citadel, but again, the Sunfire City could just take it back. I decide to harvest my 𝐼𝐻𝐻𝑟𝑎 Citadel for 2 actions. He gains 2 energy because of his betrayers. And now he has a lot more energy to use with that final action he has lingering. That being said, he's smart enough to realize that I have an action advantage, so he passes to me and makes me use up one of my actions first before deciding what he's going to do with his final action. If I was to pass and we were to end the round, I would lose 2 actions and he'd only lose 1. So this is really smart on his part. I spend that action to draw a card, and now he's trying to decide what he should do next. Looks like he's going to spend some of that energy and his final action, and he's going to play a card. He's going to play another Calyth into Realm 2 this time. This will give him the power he needs in Realm 2 to take the stone there away from my Ashen Leaf, but it also untaps his 𝐅𝐻𝐻𝑟𝑎𝑛𝑐𝑒 𝑅𝐽𝑒, giving him access to even more potential actions either now or later. Harvesting the 𝐅𝐻�‌�𝑟𝑎 and the Calyth would also give him another 4 energy, which is kind of insane. He's starting to catch up to my action advantage with his action advantage, and there's not a whole lot I can do about it. I only have 1 action left. I don't have any good attacks. More than likely, I'm gonna have to just draw another card, and that's what I do. I spend my last action to draw, digging for answers, or digging for anything that can help turn this game around as far as tempo is concerned. Things that can generate extra actions for me, or any cards that give me significant value that will allow me to catch up to all of the insane plays that Alex seems to keep making. He does decide to harvest his 𝐅𝐻𝐻𝑟𝑎𝑛𝑐𝑒 𝅽𝑒, getting another 2 energy and another action. He harvests the Calyth as well, so he's at 2 actions. And he decides to attack in Realm 1. First, he targets with the Solaris Stormcaster so that I have to remove the shield counter in order to keep it from dying. Then he'll draw 2 cards off the bow, he'll gain an energy, and he'll get to shoot out those 2 -1 counters. He decides to put the 2 -1 counters on the Ashen Leaf, giving me 0 power in Realm 2. It is worth pointing out that a wonder with 0 power will still win battle against an opposing realm that does not have any wonder at all. He decides to play an Ethereal Grove, copying my Indra's Citadel with its Symbiosis ability, giving him access to 2 more actions when he harvests it. And now you can see how his deck is just starting to snowball. He just keeps getting action advantage, and because of his 2 Betrayers of Ironskin Clan, all of that action advantage can keep pumping out energy so that it's not wasted actions. It's not just actions he can use to draw or attack when he's out of energy. He can keep generating more and keep playing relevant cards with those extra actions, which is pretty huge. It looks like he's trying to decide whether he wants to harvest the Ethereal Grove or not. He doesn't have any actions left, and he can't harvest his Resonance Reach because I have the Galen Mosspaw in play. Does he actually decide to harvest the Ethereal Grove? No. He's got something else he can play that doesn't require an action that really catches me off guard. 𝐅𝐵𝑎𝑐ℎ. It's got attuned Patria, and now that he has an Ethereal Grove out, he does have a Patria land so that it turns on that attuned. 6 energy, 9 power, a tap-free ability that allows him to give +5 to any wonder in any realm, and -5 to any other wonder. This is huge for him because not only is he buffing his side in basically 2 different realms, but he's able to kill my Galen Mosspaw so that his Resonance Reach is able to be harvested again. Very, very difficult for me to overcome. He also decides to give the +5 buff to the Sirius so that maybe he'll have enough power in 3 to actually attack and claim the stone there. My Eye of Patria is a 10 power right now, so Sirius is only 9. He does decide to harvest the Resonance Reach, giving himself another action and 2 energy, and more importantly putting a shield counter on his Sirius so that he doesn't risk me removing it later on. Then he finally harvests the Ethereal Grove, copying my Indra's Citadel for 2 more actions and 2 more energy, and he's right back up to an insane amount of actions and energy, but now with a 9 power Razia in Realm 5. And there is absolutely nothing that I can do about this. I am at the mercy of his whims. Completely tapped out, other than my 1 Sunfire City, but because I don't have any energy, it would be very wasteful to harvest it and try to do anything at all. I simply have to wait until Alex has finished doing all of whatever craziness he has lined up, and then hope that I can come back in round 6. He's thinking about how best to use those 3 actions. The one upside for me is the fact that all of his potential sources of actions have been harvested. Everything is tapped. So I don't necessarily have to worry about him having an action advantage in round 6 or 7, because I do still have my 1 untapped Sunfire City. So that really is the silver lining here. I am going to be ahead on actions going into round 6. Unless he has even more lands to play, which is definitely a possibility here. But he's thinking carefully about what play to make, which makes me think he has something that could be good in a later round. And it looks like I'm right. He drops a Murkmire Incarnate, which could get better in later rounds, but it is plenty good right now. 8 power, and on arrival it taps all lands. Since his are already all tapped, it doesn't hurt him that much. But it does tap down my 1 Sunfire City, taking away my potential action advantage in the later rounds, while also taking away my 1 card that can take things back if he steals my stuff, which is a little bit scary. It's also worth pointing out that now he has power in Realm 4, which means if he decides to attack in Realm 4, he can take the stone there as well. One of the great things about cards like Murkmire Incarnate or Razzia is that they add power to a realm while also doing some sort of crazy utility. Being able to get both at the same time with one card for one action, one play, or I guess in the case of Razzia, no actions, is what makes some of these cards so good. And it's that same line of thinking that makes Sirius so good as well. The fact that it can be used to do what you need it to do, while also adding relevant power into a realm. He decides to spend one of his actions to attack in Realm 1 again, triggering his bow, killing my giant Hydro Jelly, finally, adding an energy and drawing 2 cards. Clearly the main reason he's doing this is simply to draw more cards. If he can fill up his hands with all of the best potential answers or value engines going into the end of the game, he just has way more potential than me to do whatever he needs to do to turn the game in his favor. He decides to put the 2 -1 counters on the Eye of Petraea because all he needed to kill my giant Hydro Jelly was simply the Solaris Stormcaster trigger. There's a lot happening at the same time here, and it does get a little tricky to follow, but he's making ridiculously powerful plays pretty much non-stop at this point. He does have 1 action left and some energy. The question is, how is he going to utilize it? Does he take another stone? Or does he attack again in 1 to draw even more cards? Or does he have something in hand that he really wants to play before going into round 6? It is worth pointing out that he's already going to be able to start round 6 and make the first play if he wants to. So he doesn't necessarily have to worry about taking a stone for those reasons. That being said, if he's got nothing better to do with his action, he could try and take the stone. But it looks like he's just going to bite the bullet now and activate his Murkmire Incarnate, the Sacrifice action ability, which will use his last action, and destroy all tapped lands. This destroys his as well. And the biggest problem there is it takes all of my cores offline. All of my links would be gone, and any card that I have in my hand that requires a core, requires a link in order to play, would no longer be able to be played. He would be in the same boat as well, although it's worth pointing out that he has a Petraea link on each of his Calyths, and even though I do have a Petraea link on my Ashen Leaf, one simple attack from Realm 1 with that utterly complex compound bow could kill the Ashen Leaf and get rid of that Petraea core for me. In fact, let me take a moment to explain the back and forth between me and Alex right here. What Alex wants to do is he wants to take those last 2 -1 counters that he put on the Eye of Petraea and instead back things up and put them on the Ashen Leaf. He realizes that if the Ashen Leaf is dead when he uses the Sacrifice action on the Murkmire Incarnate, then I won't have a Petraea core, I won't have a Petraea link in order to play core cards for Petraea, and he would have a much better chance of locking me out of playing anything. Unfortunately, since I already passed after he distributed the -1 counters, and then he almost used his Sacrifice action and backed it up, it is too late. It is multiple turns back. So he's not going to be able to put those -1 counters on the Ashen Leaf. He's going to have to stick to his original decision, putting them on the Eye of Petraea, and now he has to decide if it's still worth it to use the Sacrifice action on the Murkmire Incarnate, and then, you know, take a chance on me being able to play something before he has a chance to attack again in 1 and kill the Ashen Leaf later on. Looks like he is going to Sacrifice action, destroy all tapped lands with the Murkmire Incarnate. Everything's gone. One thing I do want to point out is that because the Sunfire City had a shield counter on it, I don't have to destroy it. A shield counter gives me the option of instead removing a shield counter whenever that land would be targeted or whenever that land would be destroyed. and even though it's not being targeted right now, it is a destroy coming from the Murkmire Incarnate. So I remove the shield counter, I get to keep my Sunfire City and keep a Boundless Core in play, which is very, very important. The upside of Alex choosing to put the -1 counters on the Eye of Petraea rather than the Ashen Leaf is, now that he's destroyed all lands and there's only one land in play, the Ashen Leaf is 1 power with 2 -1 counters on it and immediately dies. It is the end of round 5, the beginning of round 6, the 6th realm is unlocked, the 6th stone is up for grabs, and this will prove to be the most important round of the entire game. Alex gets to go first and chooses to play a Clear Sky Eyrie in Realm 2. Now, he doesn't have any other lands, which means he doesn't have his Kingdom 4 ability turned on that will let him double up an on-arrival ability of one of his wonders if he plays it to Realm 2. I will then spend an action to play a Glacium Keep, giving me access to Thalwind, my Thalwind Link all over again. This is probably a headache for Alex. He was hoping I didn't have any lands held in hand and that he'd get rid of all of my links so I couldn't play any of my core cards. But luckily, I still had some lands in hand and I was ready for the Murkmire Incarnate. And so now Alex has to carefully think about how he navigates the fact that he wasn't able to successfully get rid of my links and take away my ability to play my core cards. He probably wants to generate some action advantage, but it's also worth pointing out that if he attacks again in Realm 1, he can put more -1 counters on Ashen Leaf and kill it, which will at least take away my Petraea Link. He decides to play a Market of Lost Wonders into Realm 1. Again, this is going to start to build up some more action advantage for Alex, which will also build up an energy advantage considering he still has the 2 Betrayer of Ironskin clan. I decide to play the first. This is giving me access to all of my links. Now the reason I waited so long to play the first is I sort of wanted to bait him into wasting actions on possibly another attack in Realm 1 killing my Ashen Leaf, thinking that it would take away my Petraea Link, knowing full well that later in the round I plan to play out the first and get it back. It's this sort of mental preparedness or manipulation of your opponent's perception that really comes into play in a game at a high tier like this. Alex decides to play a Cast Out, looking at the top 2 cards of his deck, choosing to banish any number of them. A really good play for him now that he has the Market in play because its Attuned gets turned on, and essentially all he has to spend is 1 energy to draw a card rather than 1 action, while also digging an extra 2 cards deeper. I decide to follow that up by harvesting my Glacium Keep, getting an action back. And what I'm doing right now is simply trying to drag out the length of this round, forcing Alex to commit some of his resources before I commit my resources, knowing that I have really big plays to make that I don't want him to have answers to. He sort of knows that already and sees it coming, which is why he's kind of following suit and sort of dragging out the round himself, gaining more actions here by harvesting his Clear Sky Eyrie, which again will also give him more energy because of his 2 Betrayers of Ironskin clan. It's also worth pointing out that he's not worried about taking stones early because he has so many ways of generating extra energy that he doesn't really need the energy advantage. It's better to save those actions to make sure you only take them when you're going to keep them. He decides to spend an action and play Galactic Sovereign Throne into Realm 4. While it's untapped, enemies with on-arrival abilities are nullified. He can also tap free, and all enemies with tap abilities become nullified instead. This is going to prove to be hugely problematic for me. I decide to harvest the first, gain back an action, and now I have to think very carefully about how I deal with that Galactic Sovereign Throne so that the other cards I'm planning to play can do what I need them to do. I do have an answer in hand, but unfortunately, in order to play that answer, I need to find a way to trick him into tapping his Galactic Sovereign Throne. And I think I have the best card to do that. I drop a 𝑪𝑍𝑵𝐹, which is going to take almost all of my energy and an action, but it is a must-answer threat. If he allows me to start round 7 with 𝑪𝑍𝑵𝐹 in play, I will be able to tap action and take away all of his actions and energy, effectively taking away his entire round 7 so that I can just run rampant and do whatever I need to do to get the stones I need to win. He knows this and immediately taps his Galactic Sovereign Throne, which is what I need him to do. Now that the throne is tapped, sure, the 𝑪𝑍𝑵𝐹 is nullified because it has a tap ability, but now that it's tapped, on arrival abilities are going to work again. They will no longer be nullified, and successfully baiting him into tapping the throne so that my on arrival abilities will now work is exactly what I needed to do. It's possible that Alex sees this coming. He might be thinking right now, even though tapping the throne is the right thing to do, why would Capricorn play his 𝑪𝑍𝑵𝐹 knowing that I could just tap my throne? And that's where he kind of gets way ahead as far as his thinking and what he takes into account when he's making decisions about what to play. Here we see him drop a Wave Whisperer Bay, getting to look at the top card of his deck and choosing whether to keep it on top or bury it on the bottom. And he decides to keep it on top. Again, he's just finding ways of taking the actions he has this round and converting them into things he can use to gain actions next round, where the game is going to be decided. It's back to me, and I have very difficult decisions to make about, do I do the thing now? Do I find a way to deal with the problems I need to deal with now? Or do we try to just pass, move into round 7, and deal with it in round 7? And it's honestly not an easy question to answer. Depending on what I have in my hand, it could go either way. But I decide to spend my last action to play another land. It's an Ethereal Grove. And I'll use its Symbiosis ability to copy Alex's Market of Lost Wonders. This will allow me to either generate an extra 2 energy and action this round, or I can generate 2 actions if I save it for round 7. And this will definitely be dependent on what my opponent decides to do and whether or not Alex decides to put more value on the board this round or simply go to 7 earlier. He decides to harvest his Wave Whisperer Bay. He is not done with round 6, and this definitely informs my decision as far as what to do next. Seems like he's second guessing committing to that. Seems like maybe he's unsure about whether he should just pass and try to go to 7 and save that action and the energy it can generate because of the Betrayers for round 7. But he decides to follow through. He gets that action from harvesting the Wave Whisperer Bay, and now it's back to me. There is no easy answer for a board state like this. Sometimes waiting until 7 and being able to save as much of your resources for 7 as possible is the best move. Sometimes trying to do more in the current round, especially when you have a bunch of energy that you don't want to see go to waste, is the right way to go. It really depends on what he has in his hand. He decides to drop Noctarum the Lost, which is very, very bad for me. On arrival, he gets to banish up to 3 target cards in the Abyss, and because he dropped it on his Clear Sky Eyrie, and he does in fact have Kingdom 4 to make the ability active, he gets to trigger it twice. He gets to banish 6 cards, and then at any point in time, he can sacrifice free the Noctarum to put one of those cards from banishment into its owner's hand. I am terrified of the fact that I know he has a Sky Wraith in his Abyss. If he banishes the Sky Wraith and gets it back with the Noctarum, he can use it to steal my 𝑪𝑍𝑵𝐹, and then he doesn't even have to worry about the fact that his throne is turning it off. He'll get to use it for himself in round 7, and there will be absolutely no way I can come back from that. Now, he hasn't even decided what he's going to banish yet, and I'm already thinking of this before he even shows me what he chose. And sure enough, the Skywraith is among the cards. It's also worth pointing out that he banished my Ethereon, which has been in my Abyss since the start of the game pretty much. And then the rest of what he banished, I think, is just simply to try and mislead me. A lot of really powerful, crazy things that a normal player would be scared about, but I think he's just trying to hide what his true intentions are with the Skywraith amongst a whole bunch of other potential powerful cards that he could theoretically get back by sacrificing Noctarum. But now that I know that the Skywraith is banished, I am terrified. He also ends up banishing a Pastel Bloomdrake among the 6 cards, which is even worse because whenever that becomes banished, it gets to be put into any target realm instead, giving him access to a 7-power flyer that basically has protection from being banished kind of for free. All of this is very, very bad for me. Either the Drake or the Skywraith would have been awful on its own, but together, this is an almost insurmountable task. And now I absolutely have to find a way to make sure I can use my 𝑪𝑍𝑵𝑏𝑵 at the beginning of round 7. It's my only way to get back in this game and recover from the overwhelming advantage that Alex now has. I decide to harvest my Ethereal Grove, which is copying his Market of Lost Wonders, to get 1 more action and 2 more energy, bringing me up to 3 energy. And Alex does get some energy off of that as well, but I'm able to use that action and my energy to play my Nexus Phasebringer, banishing his Galactic Sovereign Throne and creating a copy of it. This is super crucial for me because now my 𝑪𝑍𝑵𝑏𝑵 is back online, but more importantly, if he decides to steal it with the Skywraith, I now have a Galactic Sovereign Throne so that I can tap the throne myself to shut off the 𝑪𝑍𝑵𝑏𝑵 after he steals it. Very, very important. This Galactic Sovereign Throne is proving to be a key card here in the endgame for both Alex and myself. And it seems like the end of this game is going to revolve around the 𝑪𝑍𝑵𝑏𝑵 and who can outmaneuver and who can come out on top when it comes to utilizing the 𝑪𝑍𝑵𝑏𝑵. And that's actually going to be the end of round 6, the beginning of round 7. But here's where things get interesting, because this game went so long, 2.5 hours, that the camera batteries actually died. And we did record the end of the game, but we missed the first few actions of round 7 before we caught it. So let me catch you guys up. Alex got to go first, and he decided to play the Wind Reaver, not the Skywraith that we anticipated. It must have been a top deck. He played it into Realm 4, stealing my 𝑪𝑍𝑵𝑏𝑵 in 6 and making it his own. I responded by immediately tapping my Galactic Sovereign Throne to shut down his 𝑪𝑍𝑵𝑏𝑵 just like I intended. After which he attacked in Realm 4, moving his Wind Reaver into Realm 3 with its flying ability. I then sacrificed my Ashen Leaf to a deconstruct, putting a null counter on his Pastel Bloomdrake, which moved along with the Wind Reaver into 3, so that it would be stuck there for the rest of the round. But mostly I was trying to draw into answers or ways to get back into the game, and Deconstruct drew me 2 cards. Next, he tapped his Market of Lost Wonders, getting him 2 actions. I responded by spending my second action drawing a card. Now safely in the lead, Alex was able to simply pass and force me to use my last action drawing a card, as I still haven't drawn something that can get me back into the game. And even though it looks like this game is completely over for me, I still have a couple of tricks up my sleeve. Even with no actions left, I have a ton of energy and I'm able to play an attuned Razia Balakai into Realm 3. If only it didn't take me all of my actions to draw into this and I had an action or 2 left to potentially attack, it could have changed the entire game. At this point, I'm simply playing to preserve my pride and try to make sure I don't get 7 stoned. Retaining 2 of these stones and going out guns blazing is how it needs to happen. And Razia is going to help me do that. Alex is trying to decide if it's worth it to take an action yet. He can just continue to pass since he's still in the lead, or he could choose to add insult to injury and play an answer to my Razia, which would just be unfortunate. He decides to pass, and I respond by tapping my Razia to buff up my Nexus another 5 power and kill his Calyth so he doesn't have anything in 2 that can attack and take the stone there. This is sort of just delaying the inevitable because I know his Wind Reaver can just move into 2, and at this point I have no other actions, so I shake his hand, give him the win. Congratulations to Alex on becoming the very first world champion for Wonders of the First, at least in the Dragon Cup, and also, welcome to Team First Formed. The meta has been established, but DBS updates just dropped, and a new set is on the way, Call of the Stones. 2026 is going to be insane. Thanks so much for checking out my channel. I'd like to give a huge shout out to all of my patrons over at Patreon. Without you guys, this channel would not be possible, so honestly, thank you from the bottom of my heart for all of your contributions. If you haven't yet, like and subscribe. The more likes we get and the quicker we get them, the bigger this channel will grow and the faster it will grow. I'd love nothing more than this channel to become something very special for you guys, but it's entirely up to you how fast that happens. Also, if you'd like more deck techs, that's somewhere over there, and if you'd like to see what else the channel's been up to lately, that's somewhere up that way. Also, subscribe, circle below, do all the things.